إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, it is the 10th going into the 11th of Rajab, 1438. And as of today, we're looking at prophecies spanning from 1200 to 1300, which of the Kafir era corresponds to 1731 to 1832. There are a number of prophecies we're looking at today. The first one is the rise of Al-Mahdi of Sudan and other signs, or the rise of Al-Mahdi of Sudan. Now, we have the first hadith. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ declared, "And my ummah is a portion, and our portion shall not reach its completion until we seek help in Sudan from the shepherds of camels who testified, there is no God but Allah alone, without any partner for him." It's collected by Imam Ibn Mardawayh. It is narrated by Urwa ibn Ruwaym from Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari radiyallahu anhu, who narrated that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "From Adam to us has been a portion, and from us to the day of resurrection shall be a portion. And no one shall take a larger portion except the Sudan from the shepherds of camels that say, there is no God but Allah." Collected by Imams Al-Khatib, Al-Sharbini, and Jalaluddin Al-Suyuti, and Ad-Durr al-Manthur. Abu Qubayl narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, "There shall be an emir in the Afriqiyya for 12 years, and there shall come after him tribulation, and a man shall take control, who shall fill the land with justice. Then he will hand over that control to the Mahdi, and give him the obedience, and fight on his behalf." This is collected by Na'im ibn Hammad. So these ahadith are telling us that something is going on in a particular portion of Egypt. And the upper portion of Egypt, all the way down, has always been referred to as Sudan, because the soil there is a very dark color. Now we're going to look at what Imam Ahmad ibn Zaini Dahlan, rahimahullah, said about this matter. He just says, quote, "He is the grand, trustworthy sultan, head over all sultans, whether they be Arab or Ajam, the flag bearer of knowledge, rectitude, nobility that is honored in the service of Al-Madinah and Mecca, the carrier of both the sword and the pen. May Allah lengthen his shadow in the world, the source of solving disputes in the children of Adam, the favor of Allah upon the slaves, and his favor upon the settled and Bedouin, a sister of the truth in the religion, implementer of the revealed law, of the master of the messengers, the one who accurately recites the 7 oft-repeated verses, the leader of the believers, our master, the warrior sultan, Abdul Hamid II. May Allah strengthen the throne of the sultan and the khilafah by his presence, and may he give the near and far goodness that is felt from the favor of Allah by having the sultan present. May his rule be distributed in all the lands, his commands and judgments as well." In the year 1297, a man appeared in the Sudan bearing the name Muhammad Ahmed. It is claimed by some that he was the Mahdi, or the one standing by and seeking the manifestation of the truth, and he never claimed to be the Mahdi himself. It is said that he was from the household of the Prophet ﷺ through Al-Hasan. Before his coming out, he was well known for his righteousness, and was from the Sheikhs of Tariqah. It is said that he was upon the Tariqah of the Shaikh As-Samman, and that when his followers and initiates increased, disputes arose between him and the Egyptian troops designated with rule over the Sudan, that worked in the capacity of the leader of Egypt, Muhammad Tawfiq Basha. Close quote. Now, this refers to the fact that During this time, we're entering into a period where the British are increasingly involving themselves in the affairs of the Muslim world. And Tawfiq Basha is under some pressure by the British. And so he starts to, they've just shaken off the French not long before that. Now he's under pressure of the British. Muhammad Ahmed suddenly appears. Okay, this man, who's a direct descendant of the Prophet ﷺ through Al-Hassan, which this is a portrait of him. This is him, Muhammad Ahmed. Now this man appears out of nowhere as far as they're concerned. So we're going to talk about this man because, as we see from the Ahadith that we quoted just a moment ago, the 3 Ahadith, they concern him. And we're going to go through what Imam Ahmad Zaini Dahlan says. The Imam goes on to say, quote, after this tension increased between Muhammad Ahmed and the Basha until war resulted. The Basha fought Muhammad Ahmed numerous times, and every time the Mahdi of Sudan was victorious. Muhammad Ahmed gained such power conquering over them that he took control over much of the land of Sudan and expelled the army of the Basha. When the English Empire entered Egypt, the English took charge and mobilized an army against him with many troops. This then led to the Basha fighting the Mahdi of Sudan with both the British and Egyptian army. And there were numerous wars that resulted between the two parties. Much could be said about this, and much has been reported, but in all those cases, the Mahdi of Sudan was victorious over them. The Mahdi of Sudan then took control and rule over Kordofan, Kasla, Al-Khartoum, Barbara, Danqala, and other provinces as well. He killed many of the Egyptian and British troops in numbers beyond measure, and the things he was able to do against these two armies was strange and miraculous. They came to the Mahdi of Sudan the next time with even more troops, cannons, and tools of war, the like of which no one had any way to face them. Muhammad Ahmed marched out to them, and his armies of the Sudan bore nothing other than swords, spears, and knives. They encircled the British and Egyptian armies in their theater of war, and massed around them their troops and overwhelmed them. The British stratagems of war and all their tools were of no avail. They mixed together in the combat, and Muhammad Ahmed and his troops killed most of their people while bearing nothing but spears, swords, and knives. They dispersed their enemies and put them to flight. There was a group within the army of the Mahdi of Sudan, and he gave a man named Uthman Daqna, or Diqna, control over it. Close quote. Now understand, Uthman Diqna, this is a picture of Uthman Diqna. It's one of the few pictures they have of him because very few people that were English lived to see him and live. Very few looked upon him and lived. Now, we have to put this in perspective. This is the British Empire. So they enter into Egypt. By this time, they've got the cannons, but also the minigun. If you want to do your history, you study the minigun. The minigun and all their stratagems of war, the Imam says, were of no avail. The Mahdi of Sudan, Muhammad Ahmed al-Mahdi, beat them with swords, knives, and spears. That shows us never about just warfare alone. It's about Iman power. It's about trusting in Allah the Exalted and what this is about. And a soldier by the name of Gordon was killed. Well, I would say mowed down like bad grass on a summer day by Muhammad Ahmed al-Mahdi and his troops. And it was so shocking that when this reached Queen Victoria, she was desperately saddened because she's the Empress of India during this time. This is the British Empire at its height. And Muhammad Ahmed al-Mahdi is spanking them. He won, as the Imam's going to show us, he won every single war he fought against Tawfiq Basha and against the British Empire. There was never a time where they beat him. The whole time he was alive, he beat them. And this was something miraculous because, again, Muslims will be told today, oh, there's no way you can beat them. These people, they'll do this because there's that fear of the kuffar. But this man, he didn't have that. He didn't have that. And he described himself, which we'll be seeing earlier, as he said, he did say that he was not the Mahdi, but he was the Qa'im. The Qa'im means forerunner, means standing upright in Arabic. But Qa'im means forerunner. This is eschatological language, apocalyptic language. And we're going to see why this was important and why he was telling the truth in this regard. And to put it together, because, well, we'll come to it in just a moment, because right now this will be very overwhelming for you. So we'll come through this because, again, there's this idea that these empires are invincible and only Allah is ghalib. So then we come to the next statement. Uthman Daqna, as we mentioned, I put a footnote here. They lived from 1252 to 1343. Right. As for Muhammad Ahmad al-Mahdi, he died on the 9th of Ramadan, 1302. Okay. So this is very, very recent. So the Imam goes on to say, quote, Uthman Daqna then came and brought those with him in the Sudan from many domiciles and expelled the British and Egyptian troops remaining from the land. The British and the Egyptians decided to return with more troops, more tools of war, and more stratagem, but Uthman Daqna routed them and those with them and drove them from the Sudan time after time and killed many of them. This carried on until the year 1302. 70 ships came to face Uthman Daqna, and they brought numerous tools, cannons, and other manner of battle equipment. Close quote. Now understand this, 70 ships sailed into the harbor. These are British warships. They sailed in with miniguns. They brought reinforcements. Because they could not stop Muhammad Ahmad al-Mahdi as well as Uthman Daqna. So now they brought 70 ships, miniguns, cannons, all types of stratagem of war and riflery. And we're going to find out what happened to them. He says, quote, the men disembarked with their equipment in order to do combat against the Mahdi of Sudan and Uthman Daqna. Daqna routed them again and killed most of them and put the rest to flight. Much of their wealth, steeds of war, and other things were taken as war treasure. Close quote. The word is ghanima. So it was taken as war treasure. So people were captured, the prisoners were captured, the soldiers were captured. So now it's not just Gordon, because there was an officer by the name of Gordon who was seen as sort of a fresh-faced hero, and he was seen as this great man taken prisoner. So the queen would later send, the Empress of India, she styled herself as well, would send a man that we know of as the Earl of Kitchener. Right, we're going to talk about this in just a moment. He says, quote, as of right now, which is Dhul Hijjah 1302, Uthman Daqna and those with him from the Sudan are in many different locations, while the armies of the British and the head of Egypt muster themselves together yet again. It is said that the armies of Muhammad Ahmed are near 300,000 or more. As for the claim that he is the Mahdi, there is considerable disputation among the people regarding this matter. There are some people who say that he claims to be the Mahdi, while others say that he never claimed to be the Mahdi, but on the contrary, he says that he is a standard bearer, Qa'im, for manifesting the truth, establishment of the revealed law, and expelling the British from Egypt. Allah knows best the reality of the whole situation. Most of the people say that he is a righteous man from the strongest of people in standing firm for the truth. And it was narrated by the Prophet ﷺ, who said, the assistance of this ummah in the end of time shall be in the Sudan. It stands to reason that these men fit the description in the Hadith, while others have said that it is other than them, based upon what was said by Al-Hajj in his commentary of the ayah. There shall be a multitude of those who came before from the first generations, and few from those in the latter days. Surah Al-Waqi'ah, the 56th Surah, ayat 13 to 14. Al-Khazin said of the ayah, it is referring to the believers who come before this ummah. There is the ayah where Allah said, there shall be a multitude from the early generations and a multitude of those from the latter generations. Surah Waqi'ah, the 56th surah, ayat 39 to 40. This refers to believers of this ummah. This is established according to what was collected by Al-Baghawi with a chain of transmission to Al-Tha'labi, who narrated from Urwa ibn Ruwaym, who said, when this ayah was sent down by Allah, Azza wa Jal, mighty and majestic, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu wept and said, Messenger of Allah, we've believed in the Messenger of Allah and testified to the truth brought by him, and yet there are only a small amount that shall be saved from its ranks? Allah then sent down this ayah, ayat 39 to 40, to answer ayat 13 and 14. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam called Umar ibn al-Khattab and said to him, Allah sent down this ayah regarding what you said. Umar radiallahu anhu answered, we are pleased with our Lord. We have testified to the truth of our Prophet. So the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, from Adam to us has been a portion, and from us to the day of resurrection shall be a portion. And no one shall take a larger portion except the Sudan from the shepherds of camels that say, there is no God but Allah. This was likewise mentioned in the commentary of Al-Khatib, Al-Sharbini, as well as Ad-Durr al-Manthur by Imam Jalaluddin al-Suyuti, in which they both collected the text in which Urwa ibn Ruwaym narrated this hadith from Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari radiallahu anhu from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The aforementioned hadith has also been collected by Ibn Mardawayh and Ibn Asakir, but the wording mentioned in Ad-Durr al-Manthur has a portion at the end of it in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and my ummah is a portion, and our portion shall not reach its completion until we seek help in Sudan from the shepherds of camels who testified, there is no God but Allah alone, without any partner for him. It thus stands to reason that these upstanding upright ones mentioned are with Muhammad Ahmed and Uthman Daqna. But it has also been interpreted to be other than them, while Allah knows best of his unseen affairs revealed, and all of what he informed his Prophet ﷺ of will necessarily come to pass. Ibn al-Mukrim al-Afriqi narrated in his book entitled Lisan al-Arab a hadith, which its source was not cited, and said therein, the Prophet ﷺ said, there shall come at the end of time a man called the Emir of the Angry and Wrathful Ones. His companions shall be held up, lowly and debased at the doors of the Sultan, the gatherings of the kings. They shall come to this Emir from every location and far places, just as the sudden arrival of autumn. And Allah will cause them to inherit the eastern and western portions of the land. It is therefore likely that those mentioned are these people of the Sudan, standing by Muhammad Ahmed or other than him. Many of the scholars which have authored researches on the coming of the Mahdi and his portents have mentioned the signs of his coming, the appearance of Sudan and its people. Among these authors are Jalaluddin al-Suyuti in his The Noble Rose and the Signs of the Mahdi, Ibn Hajar al-Haytami in A Quick Word regarding the narrations of the awaited Mahdi, Al-Muttaqi as-Sayyid Muhammad ibn Abdul Rasul al-Barzanji in his work Clear Proofs and Signs of the Hour. In his work, Imam Suyuti gives a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ in which he says, when Sudan comes and appears, the Arabs will be made to be revealed until they reach the outlying areas of the Jordan River. They shall manifest likewise, so that As-Sufyani shall come out with 360 riders until they reach Damascus. The month will not complete until the Kelb tribe gives the oath of allegiance in numbers of 30,000. The ahadith in which As-Sufyani is mentioned are many and are popularly known, and the discussion on it is lengthy. One of which where the Prophet ﷺ said, he will seek to fight the Mahdi at the time of his appearance. Then the army of As-Sufyani shall be swallowed up. Allah the Exalted will surely destroy him. In Ibn Hajar's work he states, from the signs of the appearance of the Mahdi is the marching forth from the west, and that the people of the west shall appear and head out to Egypt from different places, that shall be governed by As-Sufyani, who shall be ruling. This shall only be at the time of the appearance of the Mahdi at the place of Sudan, which is in relation to Egypt in the western region. It then stands to reason that this prophecy and others are in reference to those standing upright with Muhammad Ahmed, but it could also be referred to others. Those coming out of the west headed to Egypt are necessarily referring to the people of Egypt, and this is seen as they have come out from the western region of Egypt. It is said that it could be others, and Allah knows best of the secrets of His unseen and the secrets of the ahadith of His Prophet ﷺ. One of the signs of the Mahdi are the black banners which shall come out of Khurasan, and there shall be many ahadith mentioned about that. Al-Barzanji mentioned in his work, it is possible that this is referring to what happened in the time of the Abbasid Mahdi, the son of Al-Mansur. It could also be referring to the appearance of the awaited Mahdi. It was mentioned by the Shaikh Salahuddin As-Safadi, expressions that bring to fruition the thought of the high state of the Ottomans shall have its power or sultanate remain up until the coming of the Mahdi, and that they shall be from his helpers, assisted with their selves and wealth. It is also understood that their treasures, armies, tools of war, and numbers, it shall be theirs, and therefore it is compulsory to make supplication for the Ottoman state, for every Muslim, while the one who rebels against them is in the state of rebellion and Khawarij. It is compulsory for every Muslim to assist their governance, establish the principles, assist them in manifesting the revealed law, bringing to life the Sunan, bringing death to innovation, supplicating for them, and hoping for their success. And we ask Allah the Exalted that He gives them success in every good, and that He put them upon the completion of the right guidance and rectitude, and likewise the rest of their ministers, judges, and workers. If one is to follow this logic, this one standing upright and firm in the Sudan named Muhammad Ahmed is to be counted either as a rebel and one of the Khawarij for going against the Sultan, and it is compulsory to fight him, even if he did not claim to be the Mahdi, or he is not. It is possible, though, that Allah established him in order to expel the English from Egypt as a help to the Ottoman governance. And Muhammad Ahmed did not intend rebellion against the Sultan. He only intended, in generality, to act as a shepherd for the Ottoman governance. If this is understood, then the assistance of the Mahdi and that understanding is emphasized and understood by Jalaluddin al-Suyuti in his book. He mentioned therein a hadith which was collected by Na'im ibn Hammad, narrated from Abu Qubayl, in which the Prophet ﷺ said, there shall be an emir in the Afriqiyah for 12 years, and there shall come after him tribulation, and a man shall take control, who shall fill the land with justice. Then he will hand over the control to the Mahdi, and give him the obedience, and fight on his behalf. So it is possible that this man, namely Muhammad Ahmed, is the one being referred to, although it could be said to be someone else as well. Allah knows best about His unseen matters. It was said that those who went among him found that he was the Mahdi, and these were only some of his followers who sought to have the generality of people follow him and enter his obedience. However, it is known that he did not claim to be the Mahdi. In fact, some of those gathered around him said, it was heard from him without any intermediary that he clearly said, I am not the awaited Mahdi. I am only the one standing by to manifest the truth and establish the revealed law. Close quote. Now this brings about then a principle. There is a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said, there are 3 Mahdis and there are 3 Sufyani. Alright? Now, the Sufyani is the antithesis of the Mahdi. The 3rd Mahdi is the awaited Mahdi. There are 2 others, one of which is described as a Qa'im. So he said there are 3 Mahdis and there are 3 Sufyani. Now, this is collected by Suyuti in this text. And the description that we see of all 3 Mahdis, he says there are 3 Mahdis and 3 Sufyani, the description that we see is that all of them are Arabs. As we've said, so if anyone who's not Arab claims to be the Mahdi, they can just be carefully dismissed. It's very easy. Now, let's look at the case of this very important figure, the Qa'im, one of the 3 Mahdis that appeared. Okay? Muhammad Ahmed al-Mahdi was unbeatable in his time. Wasn't capable of being beaten. Uthman Daqna, in the time that Muhammad Ahmed al-Mahdi was alive, was unbeaten. They could not beat them. Winston Churchill was present in some of those battles. And he witnessed firsthand the seemingly supernatural strength of Muhammad Ahmed al-Mahdi and his armies. How miniguns were of no use, how cannons were of no use, how muskets were of no use. None of those things had any power against him. Didn't matter what the numbers were. And so the Egyptian army couldn't defeat him. The British Empire couldn't defeat him. He dies in 1302. He dies the second day of Ramadan, 1302. When he dies, Uthman Daqna is the one that's left. The first Earl of Kitchener comes down and has a series of wars with Uthman Daqna. But by the time of the death of Muhammad Ahmed al-Mahdi, when he dies, some of the power has gone out of the Jama'ah because he was the Qa'im. He was the forerunner. So Uthman Daqna is captured. He kills all of his captors and escapes again. He's captured. He kills all of his captors, including the feeder, the cook, and everyone else, and escapes again. He's captured, brought to England, almost escapes. So they realize he should live the rest of his exile in the Sudan. Because he would have won about killing English people, is what they thought. After he dies, now you have Abdul Rahman al-Mahdi, the successor. But again, he's not the Qa'im. So the first Earl of Kitchener comes down and uses a minigun and kills more than 30,000 people in a few hours with the minigun. The grave of Muhammad Ahmed al-Mahdi has become a meshhed. He dynamites it. Has the body exhumed, puts the head inside of a canister, and takes it to England. He thought he'd scattered all the bones. The people gather together all of his bones in his body and miraculously find his head. Put the whole thing back together and reinter him and build it up. And his meshhed stands today in Durman in Sudan. It was the capital city, Durman. Before the British came, British Empire made it. Khartoum was the capital. Durman was the capital. Now, just a little bit of a piece of trivia for you. The first Earl of Kitchener died a horrific death along with 10 other of his troops over a German landmine that had been laid. It was said to have blown his head off and to have decapitated all of his troops. Numerous books have been written in English. Well, not written, I would say more scrawled in English, attempting to explain how Muhammad Ahmed al-Mahdi was able to fight the British Empire, not to a draw, but to beat them every single time and to win every war for the entire duration that he was alive. Lots of things have been proposed. They were all on hashish and opium. Well, you have to. That's the go-to, isn't it? They were all on drugs. The second argument is that, well, Kitchener knew how to use the minigun better. Gordon was unexperienced. Well, from what we hear, Gordon was the last guy to be killed out of several thousand English troops as they were mowed down like grass on a summer day by Muhammad Ahmed al-Mahdi's troops. mowed down. The third reason they say as well, reason why he was able to be victorious is because we didn't want to be too hard on the Sudanese people, because that would have involved far more civilian casualties and deaths. So we had to have a very light hand. The problem with that is, then what made you dynamite his tomb? What made you use the minigun? Because everyone that was in the way of that minigun got hit. People in markets, children that were running and walking by, mothers suckling their children, they all got hit. 30,000 people were killed in about a 3-hour period with those miniguns. Miniguns that were of no avail against Muhammad Ahmad al-Mahdi. So, as we said, the Mahdi is 3 when we're talking about the Mahdi. This was one of them. The final one, the awaited Mahdi, is Al-Mahdi al-Muntadhar, the awaited Mahdi. That's the final one. There's a run-up, and these 2 run-ups are called Qa'im. They're called forerunners. This was one of the forerunners, Muhammad Ahmad al-Mahdi. Now, you'll notice that he bears a lot of representation to the Mahdi to come, although there's slight differences. Now, his name is Muhammad Ahmed. His father's name is Abdullah. If you look in his lineage, his father's name is Abdullah. His mother's name is Amina. So his name is Muhammad Ahmed ibn Abdullah. And his mother's name is Amina. He never lost a battle. The awaited Mahdi will never lose a battle. He ruled for 7 years or more. The awaited Mahdi ruled for 7 years or more. He will commit miraculous feats. I'd say defeating the British Empire, the Egyptian Ottoman forces, I'd say that is pretty miraculous. I would say that's pretty miraculous. The sun never sets on the British Empire. Yes, and they never won a battle with the Mahdi either. This is the English Empire at its height. Hadn't had a loss yet, but they did this time. So when we say that Allah the Exalted is in control of everything, this is a piece of history you can look at. They call them, they're fanatics, they're maniacs, they're hashish addicts, whatever. Point is, you lost the battle. And these amama wearing fine, dark complected gentlemen saw you out of the country. So the Qa'im, as we said, is a reference to a forerunner. Someone who harbingers in an age. So he said himself, as Imam al-Dahlan quoted him, he said, I'm not the awaited Mahdi. He didn't say I'm not a Mahdi. He said, I'm not al-Mahdi al-Muntadhar. I'm not the awaited Mahdi. I'm not him. He said, but I am only the one standing by. Qa'im. That's the actual word he said. Innama ana qa'imun. I am a qa'im. Now, the only person that says that is either a person that literally is, or he's a liar. Now, Dahlan and all the other commentators come to the same conclusion I'm telling you right now, which is that he was who he said he was. He was who he said he was. And he was unbeatable. He was clear and humble. All the people around him, they prayed, they fasted. All the reports that we have from actual eyewitnesses, not British diary logs of men who were drunk with rum or just had their first tipple of whiskey and wanted to tell a good story around the campfire. Actual people who knew Muhammad Ahmad ibn Abdullah al-Mahdi. They describe him as praying greatly in the night, being involved in worship. And as you can see, he's doing the sunnah. Now notice what the Prophet ﷺ said. Remember what he said about the awaited Mahdi? He said he will resemble me in deeds, but not in appearance. He'll have a wide forehead with a receding hairline. That's what we have here. He'll have an aquiline nose. So he's different to the Prophet ﷺ. Of the Quraysh, The particular branch he belonged to, the Banu Hashim, the Prophet ﷺ was light complected. As we can see, Muhammad Ahmad ibn Abdullah al-Mahdi is not light complected. He is a cocoa color. I would say caramel would be pushing it. He's cocoa. He's darker than caramel. He's cocoa. So this man, and well, Uthman Diqna, his assistant, goes without saying. I mean, the picture's faded. He's clearly dark-skinned. But these two Arab gentlemen were a great part of our history. Now, I realize this may be the first time we've heard this in this class, but as we see from the Hadith, the Sudan plays a part in end-time prophecy. It's already fulfilled its portion. With that being said, we now have had a clear manifestation of what the Mahdi is going to do, because Allah has given us sort of what we'd call a dress rehearsal. So no one's going to be able to stop him. And his primary target was driving out whatever people didn't belong in his area and reforming the Arab people. There's no listing of him invading the Balkans. If you look at all the ahadith, they're all Arab countries he's talking about. And he'll be near the Jordan River and all these other things. Yes, those are Arab countries. The Mahdi deals with primarily Arab issues. That's what he's dealing with. Army composed of Arabs. It's not composed of Circassians, Cossacks, Indians. No, Arabs. Why? Because Arabs are going to get rectified. Arabs are going to be remedied. Arabs are going to get fixed. And that's what the Mahdi is going to do. That's what he's going to do. Now, Nabiyuna Isa alayhi salam, that's a global phenomenon. Everyone will know it when they see it. But for the Mahdi, it took the scholars to understand, because some of the people didn't understand. Some of the people thought, oh, he's the awaited Mahdi. Which a lot of the pieces were in place. He had the nose, he had the big forehead, he was doing the things and deeds. He's from Al-Hassan. His mother's name was Aminah, father's name is Abdullah. It's like, okay, he's got all the pieces. And the only issue, though, is, well, wait a minute. He's got to go from Al-Madinah to Mecca. Okay, so he's not the awaited Mahdi, but he's certainly the Qa'im. He's one of the two ones. He's one of them. He's definitely one of them. Now, Zaini Dahlan, Imam Ahmad Zaini Dahlan, he dies 1304. So this was 2 years before he died that he saw these amazing things coming to pass. So we got to see a huge event. So we'll come to the last point that he says. He says, quote, now, if it was to be established that he claimed to be the awaited Mahdi, the matter then becomes complex. It is complex as the Mahdi that is awaited does not claim that he is the Mahdi, and does not seek the oath of allegiance for himself, nor does he fight people to obtain it, and nor does he voluntarily accept the oath of allegiance. He is forced. In fact, he does not take the oath of allegiance from the people until he is threatened with fighting, and relents. And that is the case with what Allah has done in order to prepare the pious of his slaves, and it is from his signs. People will have the evidence of his being the Mahdi, and seeking him, and he will flee from them many times. Then they will take hold of him, and force him to take the oath of allegiance, and threaten him with death, and he will relent. The appearance of the awaited Mahdi shall not be, nor the oath of allegiance, except at the time when the people have no Khalifa. These matters can both be taken from the Hadith of where the Prophet ﷺ said, disputes shall arise at the time of the death of a Khalifa. This is the most authentic Hadith narrated on the topic. Close quote. Now, wait a minute. So understand then, he can't be the awaited Mahdi, because there's a major sultan. Even if the khilaf is only for Quraysh, and we say, well, there's no khilaf in the strict sense of it, there's still a sultan, there's still sultans that are ruling. He's around during that time, so he can't be the awaited Mahdi. So Muhammad Ahmad ibn Abdullah al-Mahdi, he's got to be a Qa'im, one of the run-ups to the Mahdi. He is a type of Mahdi, but he's not the awaited Mahdi. Imam Dahlan then goes on to say, quote, as for now, the people, praise be to Allah, have a Khalifa, and he is under the leader of the believers, our master, the Sultan, Abdul Hamid II, the son of our late master, the Sultan, Abdul Hamid I, and his oath of allegiance is on the necks of the Muslims. And the history of the Sultanate is one of the best Muslim governances to have been brought about for the establishment of the revealed law, of purity, the lovers of the companions, the household, helping and assisting Muslim orthodoxy, laying waste to the people of innovation. It is not permissible to remove the oath of allegiance nor rebel against his obedience. And may Allah establish his governance, strengthen his sultanate, and whoever should remove his oath of allegiance or leave obedience to him or openly rebel against him is indeed a rebel that is transgressing all bounds. Close quote. So this prophecy was made 11 AH. It was fulfilled 1302 in completion. So that's a 1,000-year prophecy out. So now we're coming to some really powerful ones. This is 1,000 years or more for this prophecy. More than 1,000 years for this to get fulfilled. Right? The sources of Futuhat al-Islamiyya, Ad-Dawlat al-Uthmaniyya, Volume 2, pages 193 to 203. So this is very powerful because we can put in place a lot of the principles that we can see. Now we have the next prophecy, which is the stopping of the entire Hajj. This was given 9 AH, and this occurred between 1221 to 1227 Hijri. So we're going to now look at one of the main players that was affected was the leader of Mecca during this time. His name is Ash-Sharif. Remember, when you hear this title, Ash-Sharif, it means someone from the household of the Prophet ﷺ. And the one that stands out, who was most important during this time, was Ash-Sharif Ghalib ibn Masa'id. Yes, this dark-complected gentleman here. This again, because again, most of the Quraysh historically, other than the Banu Hashim, had dark skin. That's always been their case. Right. So this is Ash-Sharif Ghalib ibn Masa'id. And he is one of the ancestors of the family that rules Jordan. He's related to them. Right. Very important figure. So his name will come up in the text. So we have Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu narrating that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the hour shall not be established until there is no Hajj to the house. This is collected and authenticated by Imams al-Bazar, Abu Ya'la al-Mawsili in his Musnad, and Ibn Hibban in his Sahih. Now, historians are clear on the fact that the entire Hajj was stopped at one point. Imams Muhammad ibn Humayd, who died 1295, he mentioned it. Ahmad Zaini al-Dahlan, died 1302, he mentioned it. Jamil al-Zahawi mentioned it 1354. Abdullah Sufyan al-Qadumi, he mentioned it, he died 1331. Imam Ahmad Basha mentioned it 1394. Ahmad Basha is particularly significant because he did an entire book on the history of the Ottomans, from the first all the way down to his age. Very important figure because he lived to see the finishing of the Ottomans. And others, radiallahu anhum, detailed this. Now, there were issues, the first set of issues before we come to the stopping. The first set of issues had to do with changing the ghilaf, or the cloth of the noble Kaaba, and other problems. This was discussed by Imam Dahlan when he said, quote, after the conquest of the Wahhabiyya over the two noble sanctuaries, the matter remained as such until that which Allah had willed came to fruition. Whereas when the Sham and Egyptian delegations came to Mecca, the emir over it, Saud ibn Abdul Aziz, said to the leaders of the Hajj people, what are these customs which you are doing, and what are you carrying and honoring among yourselves? The Egyptian and Sham delegations said, this cloth for the Kaaba we have brought. It has been a long-standing custom for a long time. And they take them this is what is done by taking them and putting it over the old one and removing it. This is done as a sign and an indication to those who are making Hajj that the Hajj season is beginning. Saud ibn Abdul Aziz said, don't do that, and don't come with these after this year, even if you should be given them. If you do, I will break them, and this is the condition I have set upon you. When you bring them, you are not to work with the cloth and other items, anything of drums or tambourines. The Sham delegation returned away without being allowed Hajj in the year 1221. The emir of the Hajj from Sham had the name Abdullah Basha. When the gift reached his place, then he received some pamphlets from the Wahhabi official stating, "You may not come except with the condition we placed upon you in the year prior to this one." When they read the condition and associated pamphlets, they returned from the Hadiyah back to Sham without Hajj. Saud also ordered that the cloth of the Egyptians be burned, which occurred in the year 1221. Now, with regard to the Egyptian cloth, when it came to Saud ibn Abdul Aziz, he gave the command for it to be burned. After that, he commanded after the Hajj that a caller announce that this should never come to the two noble sanctuaries again. The ayah he had recited by the caller was, "You who believe, indeed the idol worshippers are impure. They are not to draw near to Al-Masjid al-Haram after this year." Surah At-Tawbah, the 9th Surah, 28. This stopped the Sham and Egyptian delegations from this year. In the year 1221 as well, the Wahhabi people took what was in the noble chamber as well. All of the wealth and jewels that were in the noble sanctuary were taken, and the Qadis of Mecca and Al-Madinah rebelled in the year 1221. They then took the Shaikh, Abdul Hafiz al-Ujaymi, from the scholars of Mecca and made him the judge to give judgments. They also took one of the judges in Al-Madinah from their scholars and made him the new Qadi. And after that, they forbade the people from visiting the grave of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Close quote. So understand, this is what happened. So they start by the ghilaf. What used to happen is people, the Egyptians would take the ghilaf or the kiswa on the Kaaba and they would carry it all the way to Egypt in a big procession. And they'd arrive and they would place it on top and they would remove the lower one while placing the new one on top. Right? Saud ibn Abdul Aziz said, "Don't do that. Don't do that." And when they tried to send it anyway, had it burned. Right? And then he had this ayah recited. Now this ayah is in Surah At-Tawbah, the 9th Surah, ayah 28. This is for mushrikeen. So who is he speaking about? He's speaking about those people that came to him. And who's he speaking to? His followers. You who believe, indeed the idol worshippers are najis. What? The people that came from Sham and Egypt? Yes, them. He wouldn't even accept their Hadiyah gift. So what's he supposed to do? So the man, he left the gift, he wouldn't take it back, and he didn't make his Hajj. Right? So from 1221 to 1222, there was no Hajj. There was no Hajj that year. Because he said the mushrikeen are najis, they can't come. That being said, you then have people in Al-Madinah being stopped and being told you can't visit the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So even people that aren't making Hajj, they say, "Well, I'm coming to Al-Madinah to visit the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam." No, you can't do that. That's shirk. Associating partners. So now you can't even do that. So I want you to understand the cataclysmic things that they did, the terrific damage that's been done. You might think, "Oh, it's always been like this." No, this is a recent phenomenon. This is the damage that they've done. Wow. Now, we'll look at another example from Imam Ahmad Zaini Dahlan. He said the following, quote, "We would like to make mention of the command given by Sultan Salim to Muhammad Ali Basha to prepare an army in the year 1222. In the year 1222, a command was set out by our master, the Sultan and leader, Salim, to Muhammad Ali Basha, the governor of Egypt, that he should try to ready the armies and troops to fight against the Wahhabi group and expel them from the two noble sanctuaries. Muhammad Ali Basha had taken control of Egypt in the year 1220, after there had been between him and the Mamluks that had taken Egypt a series of battles. There had been numerous other skirmishes along the way, and up until this time, he had not been able to possess all of Egypt without disruption." Close quote. Now understand this. Muhammad Ali Basha is an Albanian. He's an Albanian. He was his own governor. And he and the Ottomans did not see eye to eye. So when he sweeps down into Egypt, tall Albanian, red beard, green eyes. He sweeps down into Egypt and takes over. He encounters the Mamluk, which are in power. So he gets into this skirmish with the Mamluk. Why? The Mamluk are governing Egypt, and they are shafi'is. Small government, small army, and there are militias. So every province, every muhafadha has guns and swords and access. Muhammad Ali Pasha arrives there. This is Ottoman, the later Ottoman times. They tried to ban guns from people accessing guns and weapons. What do you have guns and weaponry for? So he attempts to put a law in place to ban possession of rifles and weapons, which leads to a general uprising. He also creates a huge public sector, because the rulings that the Hanafis tend to pass in their fatwa allow a very big public sector. So the public sector is very large and the private sector is small. Well, in a country like Egypt that had never had that, what happened? The economy collapsed. Because the economy depended on small government and a large private sector and a small public sector. So you didn't have a lot of government workers and everything else. So he came in and set this huge state up, just like what he had back home in Albania. So there were all these government workers now. But businesses suffered, like the souk markets and everything else, because there's nothing in place. He tries to hire Hanafi qadis, and the people are like, well, the madhab is here, in which there are qadis, but there's hardly anyone to use it. So he starts preferring those rulings, and no one knows what those rulings are. No one uses that in court documents. So it starts to create this environment. He ultimately wound up killing off the vast majority of the Mamluk. He wound up killing them off because the battle between these groups became so severe. This is coming after as well the Mahdi of Sudan. So this is coming before the Mahdi of Sudan. So these events are sort of building up to it. So Egypt is being transformed into sort of a separate province. So when the Ottomans contact him, because he has such large armies, we require your assistance. It puts him in a situation where Egypt isn't even completely secured yet. So how will he answer with armies? Right? So this is just some background to understanding about Muhammad Ali Pasha. Okay. He says, quote, as he was currently engaged in these activities, it was not easy for him to send the armies to fight the Wahhabi group in Al-Hijaz. But the commands of the Sultan to do this kept coming, and they were direct. He was urged to hasten the mobilization, but this proved difficult for him until the year 1226. At that point, he raised a huge army and made the head over it his son, Tawsun Pasha. And of those to go as charge along with him were some of the scholars, the rightly guided Shaikh and Master Ahmad al-Tahtawi, who had written the footnotes to the text Ad-Durr al-Mukhtar. There also came with him Muhammad Ali Pasha. There also came with Muhammad Ali Pasha the head of the merchants by the name of As-Sayyid Muhammad al-Mahruqi. We will now mention how the armies reached the place of Yanbu' and Pasha's fighting against the Wahhabi head in the year 1226. Having mobilized and come from Egypt in the month of Ramadan in the year 1226, they took dominion over the area of Yanbu' and other areas with ease until they reached As-Safra. They gathered together there in the mountains and surrounding areas were Arab tribes and their leaders. Then came Uthman al-Muda'ifi from a Ta'if and those Arab tribes in large numbers, and between him and the Egyptian troops resulted a large war. This occurred on the 13th of Dhul-Qa'dah, 1226, and there was large and harsh fighting between the mountains. They repelled Tawsun Pasha and those with him of the troops and killed many of them, and the Arabs took their wealth and spoils and most of what they had with them. The army took to flight in every direction, and those that were safe returned to Egypt, as well as the sheikhs that had come from the army. Tawsun Pasha delayed, waiting for permission from his father Muhammad Ali Pasha regarding what to do. In the month of Muharram, in the year 1227, Muhammad Ali Pasha raised another army and sent some of them by sea and put his treasurer over them by the name of Wanabarta and commanded him and his son Tawsun Basha to go to the area of Yanbu' in the month of Safar and raise an army from others besides them in order to travel the land. Once the army had triumphed over the Wahhabiyya, Mecca was freed from their grasp, and everyone upon the religion of Ibn Saud and the innovative belief of Muhammad Abdul Wahhab was expelled. Close quote. Understand then exactly what was said. Everyone upon the religion of Ibn Saud. He didn't say, oh, this is the religion. Everyone understood it as a different religion, whatever they were bringing. Salafiyya or Wahhabiyya, whatever you want to call it. It's a different religion. And everyone understood this. So, from 1221 to 1227, between 1221 and 1222, the Hajj was interrupted on a global scale. Then you have, after that, people coming to the Hajj and getting infected. So now they say, oh yes, you can come in now because now we're prepared and you have to get these teachings. There's one important figure. Actually, two important figures that came. One is Sayyid Ahmed Rai Breli. Sayyid Ahmed Rai Breli. He goes there on Hajj from India. He gets infected. There's another man that comes there. His name is Tito Mir. And his good friend Dudu Mian. All three of them get infected, as well as Shari'atullah Patel. Let's talk about them. Sayyid Ahmed Rai Breli heads back to India. That's how Salafiyya gets in India. Tito Mir, Dudu Mian, they go back to Chittagong, which is in today's Bangladesh. Right, so they go back to what would later become Bangladesh. Shari'atullah Patel goes to near Dhaka, which is again in today's. So this is how Salafiyya enters India. This is how it goes in. As early as the 1220s, the infection starts. And the damage from that infection, you could not understand. Anyone who doesn't understand this can't make sense of Bradley Deobandi Ahle Hadith, this issue. It doesn't make sense. Everyone's just like, okay, you must choose one of these three. You're standing in a foot shop, you say, okay, listen, it's either Skechers, Nikes, or Reebok. You have to choose one. When in actuality, it's none. In actuality, it's none in the sense that these incidents occurred because of Salafiyya entering in. Ahle Hadith is a submission to Salafiyya. The Deoband circumstance, some became infected, some were not. That's a response to what happened with Salafiyya. And Jama'ah Ahl Sunnah, which later became labeled Brelvis, was not a reaction. It was Imam Ahmad al-Khan and all the scholars and other people telling people to stay as they are and not join that movement. In the latter ages after that, in the 70s and 60s, it's become more or less reactionary. The dynamism that it had under Imam Ahmad al-Khan is no longer there. And this can be evidenced just by looking at Jama'ah Ahl Sunnah and what they produce. The dynamism and the fire is not there. Not on any real level. They're not transforming societies. Well, they're transforming them, but you understand what I mean. So you have to understand that the conditions that are occurring, you cannot have an overarching understanding of Salafiyya in India and understand why Muslims from the Indian subcontinent are the way they are without studying this and without looking at the footsteps that lead back. Because it's not just Arabs that are now impacted, it's even non-Arabs that are impacted. Now, the Imam goes on to say, quote, the army with Muhammad Ali Basha then moved on, and when they reached Al-Madinah the Radiant, in the month of Dhul Qa'dah, they expelled whoever was from the Wahhabiyya from the city, and arrested Ibn Madian, who had been put in charge of Al-Madinah. Ibn Madian and other leaders were sent to Istanbul, where they were paraded around, beaten, and then killed and buried in one grave. Our master Al-Sharif Ghalib asked the Mufti of Mecca, the Shaikh Abdul Malik Al-Qala'i, have you written down a history of the period of the Wahhabis or not? The Shaykh responded, Allah annihilate all trace of the Khawarij from the land. There was a history text put together by the Mufti Abdul Malik, but it is not known whether he started compiling it before he was asked or whether he dictated as the events unfolded. Close quote. So this is taken from خلاصة الكلام في بيان أمراء البلد الحرام من زمان سيدنا النبي إلى وقتنا هذا بالتمام, pages 376 to 378 and 381 to 384. Right. Now we have our third one, which is conflict with the Khawarij. This prophecy was made 9 AH. Its fulfillment would be realized 1200 AH and onwards. So literally 1100 years plus this prophecy was fulfilled. This is hugely significant. So the Khawarij are also prophesied to keep occurring every 100 years. The Prophet ﷺ said, they shall continue to appear every 100 years until you shall fight them while they are in the army of the false Messiah. Collected by Imams Muslim in Al-Jami al-Sahih and Abu Dawud and As-Sunan. The Prophet ﷺ said, there shall be in the end of time in my ummah people who will speak to you with what neither you nor your fathers heard. Take care and beware of them. It's collected by a Muslim in Al-Jami al-Sahih. Our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ proclaimed, there shall be at the end of time in my ummah false messiahs, liars, that shall come to you and bring you speech that neither you nor your fathers have heard before. You should take heed and beware of them, lest they lead you astray and put you to trial. Again, collected by a Muslim in Al-Jami al-Sahih. The Prophet ﷺ, he said further, there shall be a group that will come and say to the people, we are scholars and sheikhs. We call you to the religion. Yet they are liars in that, and shall speak lies and innovate false rulings and false principles of theology. Take heed regarding them and beware. Collected by At-Tayyi in Al-Kashir and Haqa'iq Sunan, volume 1, pages 620 to 621. So we understand then from this, because it mentions fighting the Khawarij over and over again. Now, from the time that Muhammad Abdul Wahhab and his group first appeared, there were 50 wars in the sacred precinct. 50. Now, we all know that the Prophet ﷺ had said, and Allah said in his book, that it's forbidden to engage in this type of combat. But the people of innovation gave no choice, because they were attacking. Now, Imam Ahmad Zaini Dahlan, rahimahullah, said of the wars with Khawarij, now known as Salafiyah, he said, quote, there should also be mention made of the fighting that took place between Al-Sharif Ghalib and the Wahhabiyah in the year 1205. When our master Sharif Ghalib was asked for permission by them to make Hajj, and he prevented them and threatened them that he would ride against them and follow words with actions if they came. This was said to them as they manifested their affair and brought about their evil, and as Sharif sought to prevent them from reaching the sacred house of Allah the Exalted. He did all that was possible, but in some ways was incapable of stopping it. May Allah reward him with good in the attempt. We would now like to mention some of the incidents that occurred between Sharif and his group, as there occurred some 50 major incidents between them that took place between 1205 and 1220. The first war that took place in the year 1205, in which Sharif sent against the Wahhabiyah horses, riders, and armies in plentiful number from the heads of the household of the Prophet ﷺ and those besides. The emir of the expedition was his brother, as Sayyid Abdul Aziz ibn Masa'id. When they headed out from Mecca, they were 600 strong and increased in number along the way by many times from the different tribes of the Arabs. There was much discussion among the tribes, and there was a number of issues, but they traveled on until they came under his obedience. Until there came under his obedience many tribes, and he took control of many towns, one after the other, until he reached Ariq ad-Dosum. He then took control of the villages around the Najd, some by fighting and others without fighting. The first village they came to was Dariyah, and it was the first of the villages of the Najd taken. He killed one of 10 men and expelled a group and took prisoner a group. He then traveled on to the next village, known as Miska. He overwhelmed his people, and it came under his control. And next he traveled along and reached the village of Sawaj. He defeated the people of Sawaj and came to the people of Uthayla, then to Wadda. The people of Wadda sought to be under his safety, and the same thing was the case for the people of Al-Qaydiyatiyya. After this, he traveled on and came down to the area of Unayza in the village of Bassam. The people there were in castles. As-Sayyid Abdul Aziz besieged them for a number of days, but then headed out. As the time became lengthy and many of the Ashraf people there wanted to head back to Mecca. This was to be the case as the Ashraf demanded to head back, and they decided to head back to Mecca as they had been gone for almost half a year. This was the first ever battle which occurred, and in this particular one our master As-Sharif by himself marched out with others that came down to the Najd with great difficulty and distrust, but with others accompanying them. He took the power of the Wahhabiyya around him, killed some of them. The reason this war happened is that the Wahhabiyya had cut off the ways to Mecca through robbery and smuggling. As-Sharif Abdul Aziz returned to Mecca safe and sound, and those fights are separate from their cause is different to the other wars that also occurred with the Wahhabiyya. Number 2, the second war connected to the Wahhabiyya came about as our master Sharif Ghalib, when his father Abdul Aziz was absent for a period of time, was absent for a period of time in the first battle, and he was not there to help the grandfather. As-Sharif prepared another army and headed out with him, leading, and exited from Mecca on the 23rd of Sha'ban 1205, and carried on until he reached the village of Ash-Shu'ara, which is a fortified village. He surrounded the four sides of it and moved against it with explosives, catapults, and other stratagem of war that was increased every day. The people sought a safety truce so he gave them peace. As-Sharif Ghalib sought to go back to Mecca, as it was clear the time for Hajj, when he came across his brother As-Sayyid Abdul Aziz, who was resident in Shu'ara. As for the Ashraf, who left the company of As-Sayyid Abdul Aziz, they came across our master As-Sharif Ghalib on the way, and he gave them more provisions, and they returned with him to Shu'ara. After this, both brothers in the army headed to Mecca and entered therein on the 21st of Dhul-Qa'dah, 1205. The third battle. This happened in Rabi'a Thani in the year 1206, and As-Sharif Ghalib prepared an army and put over the head of them his brother As-Sayyid Abdul Aziz to fight the tribes which had entered into the religion of Abdul Aziz ibn Muhammad ibn Saud. The Meccan army reached Turba, then Rania, and then Baisha. When they reached the theater of war, all the tribes in the area obeyed As-Sharif, and they banded together and broke the base and authority given to Abdul Aziz ibn Muhammad ibn Saud. These tribes, with the man of this new religion, would later return to his obedience a second time, but this will be discussed later. After winning, As-Sharif stayed on for a period of time in Baisha, then returned to Mecca with all those that were with him. Here we should make mention of the tribulation that occurred between the minister, our master, As-Sharif, and the stewards facing him at their balcony section, as well as the tribulation between the sheikhs of the Meccan Haram and the people of Al-Madinah in the year 1207. In the month of Sha'ban in the year 1207, there was an incident of tribulation that occurred in Al-Madinah between the minister of our master As-Sharif and Kawahi and the stewards that were leaning against the balconies. So our master As-Sharif As-Sayyid Nasir Ibn Mastur was sent and brought a truce that ended hostilities and put out the fire of tribulation. And then after that came an incident of tribulation between the Shaikh and the Meccan Haram, and the people of Al-Medina, and the tribulation almost kindled a war after the words. But our master Al-Sharif, As-Sayyid Nasir ibn Mastur, intervened and brought peace. In this month, our master Al-Sharif was sent to the high state to inform them about and explain to them the depth of the Wahhabiyah. Also sent along with him was As-Sayyid Muhsin ibn Abdullah al-Hamudi, As-Sayyid Hussein, Mufti of the Malikis. The state did not take kindly to this new news and did not turn to them in assistance either. Immediately after. Number 4. On Dhul-Hijjah, the 24th, in the year 1208, there was another battle. And this battle again had to do with those who had entered into the obedience of Ibn Saud and followed him according to what had been innovated by Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. Al-Sharif Ghalib gathered many of the desert Arabs from Al-Baqum, or Tayba and others, and put in charge of this battle Uthman al-Mada'ifi. A man from the Wahhabiyah named Qayhan Ibn Qayhan came to a place called a man from the Wahhabiyah named Ibn Qayhan came to a place called Uqaylan with his group, and there was a great war between them. After this point, Uthman committed an outrage by taking the pack camels of Ibn Qayhan. The second Fajr came, and Ibn Qayhan came against Uthman al-Mada'ifi and was able to prevail, but he could not wrest from him his pack camels. Al-Mada'ifi prevented him from going further, and this remained the case until he returned to Mecca. In the year 1208, Al-Sharif Ghalib had to arrest Al-Sharif. Sharif Ghalib had to arrest Al-Sharif Abdullah bin Sarur when some news of wrong actions reached him. Al-Sharif Abdullah was jailed for 4 months and then set free and headed to the mountains after a release and exiled. There was in the month of Sha'ban in the year 1208 torrential rain in Mecca, which desolated every direction, laid waste and destroyed many of the houses, and killed some 40 people that were meant to die by the decree of Allah. In the month of Rabi al-Akhir, in the year 1209, our master, Al-Sharif Ghalib, prepared an army and put it under the charge of his brother, our master, Al-Sharif Abdul Mu'in. He traveled from At-Ta'if while having many of the tribes and army with him. He set out until he intended to reach a place known as Raghwa, where there was present the clan of Hadi ibn Qurmula. Hadi ibn Qurmula was from those who followed Ibn Saud and had entered his religion. When Al-Sharif Abdul Mu'in reached the area, he found him and went to take hold of him, but Ibn Qurmula fled. Al-Sharif Abdul Mu'in moved on, and from there to Rania, with those with him from the desert Arabs and associated groups. There happened to be in Rania those who followed Ibn Saud, including Ibn Qatnan. Al-Sharif came to him, encircled his groups that they were locked in their castle. And then he was taken hold of and sent back to Mecca, where he would be held by Al-Sharif Ghalib. When Ibn Qatnan arrived, he sought some pardon from Al-Sharif, who indeed did pardon him and make a pact with him. Once complete, he set out after his journey and headed back home, and made an oath he would do this act. Instead of betraying him, and when he reached his land and manifested his disobedience and started fighting with the people, Al-Sharif Abdul Mu'in launched some intrigue and sent to him a group saying that they would like him to be upon his religion, and he confirmed the idea. They then came forward to him in the castle and laid hands on them, and they killed him. After this, Al-Sharif Abdul Mu'in traveled out to places that had people in them, following Ibn Sa'ud. One such place was a town called Burain. When he went to Sha'ab, then fought an expedition against a Pale named Siyaj al-Khayr. While there, some people came down to him that had entered into the religion of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. Among them was a group from the Hutazim and Mutayr. As for Mutayr, Sharif came to them as a warner and they headed out. As for Hutaim, Sharif took hold of them, killed many of them, and fought and put them to flight. Then he headed back to Mecca on the 9th of Rajab, 1209 AH. This is the most extensive over all the wars. In the months of Safar and the months of 1210, in the month of Safar in the year 1210, our master Al-Sharif Ghalib prepared his troops for war and put them under the command of his Sayyid Nasir bin Sulaiman and commanded him to seek out the groups from the tribes that had entered into the religion of Ibn Sa'ud. As-Sayyid moved against them, fought them, and he went to several places. One of them, Al-Thumamiyya, against his brother. Several places, one of them, Al-Thumamiyya, against the family of Rawq. As-Sayyid killed them and took from them the castles that they had stolen and returned to the city, and returned to Mecca safely. Close quote. So this is taken from خلاصة الكلام في بيان أمراء البلد الحرام من زمان سيدنا النبي إلى وقتنا هذا بالتمام, pages 349 to 373. Close quote. So this is our presentation of prophecies today, in terms of what we came through. So I say all that to say, أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم واستغفر الله إن الله غفور رحيم رحيم الراحمين. Are there questions over what we covered today on the Qa'im? One of the three Mahdis, one of the Qa'ims of this age, or the Hajj being stopped, or the fighting of the Hajj?
On the first page, the third Hadith, it is mentioned that then he will hand over the control to the Mahdi and give him the obedience and fight on his behalf. It's written as if it's assuming that he will meet the Mahdi. Does this mean, I'm assuming it means something else?
Okay, so the question is on the third Hadith, that power will be handed over to the Mahdi by this person to him. That particular Hadith refers again to another Qa'im, because there'll be two before the Mahdi.
So he'll hand over the obedience
to the Mahdi.
The next Qa'im.
Yes, that's right. He'll hand it over to them, and then that Qa'im, the actual second Qa'im, will hand over obedience to the Mahdi. Yes. Other questions? Yes.
On page 6, the stopping of the entire Hajj.
Yes.
It says it was fulfilled from 1221 to 1227 AH.
Yes.
Does that mean that it won't happen again? Or is it possible it could happen again?
Well, if you hold the Hadith in its absolute sense, when the Muslims smell the cool wind after Nabi Isa has been victorious and all the Muslims die, there won't be a Hajj again, and that will be permanent, because that will be the signs of the end of time. There'll be no Muslims left on earth. So you could say that it will happen again in that sense. Right. So that still stands. But in this instance, I was talking about people actually being prevented. Right. Whereas this case, there'll be no one to go because all the Muslims will have gone back to all the will have died.
But just prior to that, so people won't be stopped again from Hajj, or is it possible? Doubtful that people won't be stopped again, because the level of travel and what's going on, and we don't have any ahadith that list that at the time of the Mahdi or Nabi Isa Hajj will be stopped. In fact, it's listed that when Ya'juj and Ma'juj are in the earth, people will still be making Hajj at that time. So that hadith in the Bukhari would tend to make us understand, okay, it's still going to be going on. Questions? Yes? No? Questions? Yes.
Okay. There's a brief mention of Khurasan and the Black Banners. Where is exactly Khurasan, and what does it planet will arrive or rise on Khorasan?
So the question is regarding Khorasan and the Black Banners. Khorasan encompasses a big chunk of Afghanistan today, and the countries that are just above it and next to it, which would be east of it, right? It's part of this area. Now, the Black Banners have to do with the fact that that is a representation of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ regarding his amama and such, because that's what the Abbasids came with. That's the color that they came with, right? When the Abbasids came to power, right? So that's why when people saw the Abbasids, they knew, okay, this is the household of the Prophet ﷺ. When the Mahdi comes, it won't be a time of oppression. If you remember when we discussed the coming of the Abbasids, when he said, when you see those black banners, it doesn't always mean good news. So we saw the black banners for the Abbasids, it meant oppression, because the Bani al-Abbas were in many instances, they were tyrants in many instances. But in the case of the awaited Mahdi, it will mean that, again, the household of the Prophet ﷺ is revivifying. It's coming again. Right. Other questions? No? So with that said, then, we will close here and say, Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk innahu ghafurur rahim rahimin wa la ilaha illa Allah. Wassalamu alaikum.